It hurts in a way few people ever talk about. You look back at your life and realize that many of the people you thought would walk beside you forever are no longer there. Some left quietly. Some left suddenly. Some betrayed your trust. Some drifted away without explanation. Some simply stopped understanding who you were becoming. And when you are someone who loves deeply, who remains loyal long after others have given up, who invests your heart into people instead of using them, every departure leaves a mark. Many people who feel called to a greater purpose carry this hidden grief. They are not only grieving relationships that ended, they are grieving dreams they had for those relationships. They are grieving conversations that never happened, apologies that never came, and connections they believed would last a lifetime. There were seasons when you looked around and wondered why your path seemed different from everyone else's. You saw people surrounded by familiar faces while your circle grew smaller. You saw others holding on to relationships while yours seemed to disappear one by one. You questioned yourself. You questioned your value. You questioned whether something was wrong with you. Yet one of the most painful truths about growth is that not everyone is meant to travel every mile of your journey. Some people are assigned to a chapter, not the entire story. This does not mean they were bad people. It does not mean the memories were fake. It simply means their role had an ending point that you could not see at the beginning. Many chosen people spend years believing that every loss is proof of failure. They carry the weight of rejection and assume it reflects their worth. But the reality is often very different. Sometimes people leave because your growth makes them uncomfortable. Sometimes they leave because your values begin to change. Sometimes they leave because the version of you they were familiar with can no longer remain the same. Growth creates distance where comfort once existed. Transformation creates separation where familiarity once thrived. The painful part is that growth rarely announces itself gently. It often arrives through loss. It often arrives through endings. It often arrives through moments that make no sense while they are happening. You may have experienced friendships that felt unbreakable until suddenly they were gone. You may have experienced family relationships that became strained as you matured emotionally and spiritually. You may have experienced seasons where even the people closest to you seemed unable to understand what was happening inside your heart. Those moments can make a person feel isolated. They can make a person wonder if they are destined to walk through life alone. But being separated from certain people is not the same as being abandoned by God. In fact, many times the opposite is true. Sometimes the separation is creating space for healing that could never happen while you remained attached to what was familiar. Sometimes the distance protects your future from patterns that would have kept you stuck. Sometimes what feels like rejection is actually redirection. The chosen often discover that the people they lose reveal something important about the people they become. Every goodbye teaches a lesson about resilience. Every disappointment reveals hidden strength. Every season of loneliness uncovers parts of your character that comfort never could. That does not mean the pain is easy. It does not mean you should pretend the losses never hurt. The tears were real. The disappointment was real. The nights spent wondering what happened were real. God saw every one of those moments. God saw the tears that nobody else noticed. God saw the prayers spoken in silence. God saw the weight you carried while trying to appear strong for everyone around you. One of the reasons chosen people often lose many relationships is because they are being prepared to find their identity beyond human approval. When your confidence depends entirely on who stays, every departure feels like destruction. But when your confidence begins to grow from a deeper place, you slowly realize that your worth remains intact even when people walk away. Your value is not determined by who understood you. Your value is not determined by who appreciated you. Your value is not determined by who chose to remain. There is something deeply valuable within you that existed before anyone arrived and will remain long after others leave. Many people never discover this because they spend their entire lives chasing validation. The chosen are often forced to learn a different lesson. They learn that peace cannot be built upon the opinions of others. They learn that strength is often developed in solitude. They learn that purpose sometimes requires seasons of separation. Looking back, you may realize that some of the relationships you mourned the most were actually limiting your growth. At the time, losing them felt devastating. At the time, it felt unfair. At the time, it felt like life was taking something precious away from you. Yet, months later, or years later, you saw things differently. You recognized patterns you had ignored. You recognized compromises you had been making. You recognized ways you had been shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. Many chosen people have spent years making themselves smaller so they would not intimidate others. They have hidden their gifts. They have silenced their dreams. They have reduced their light because they feared being misunderstood. Eventually, however, there comes a point where growth demands honesty. You can no longer pretend to be someone you are not. You can no longer abandon your purpose to maintain relationships that depend upon your stagnation. And when that moment arrives, some people leave. The loss hurts, but the alternative would have cost you even more. It would have cost your authenticity. It would have cost your peace. It would have cost your future. There is a reason so many chosen people describe their journey as lonely. Not because they are unlovable, not because they are destined for isolation, not because they are somehow different in a negative sense. The loneliness often comes from carrying a vision that others cannot yet see. It comes from pursuing growth when others prefer comfort. It comes from continuing forward when giving up would have been easier. The fact that you are still standing says more about your strength than you realize. Some of your greatest victories happened in silence when nobody was watching. Some of your greatest battles were fought entirely within your own heart. You carried burdens that few people ever noticed. Your kindness cost you more than most people will ever understand. Yet despite everything, you continued moving forward. That persistence matters. That resilience matters. Your story matters. The losses you experienced do not define your destiny. The people who left do not determine your future. The chapters that ended are not the final chapter. Many chosen people eventually discover that every season of loss was also creating room for something new. New wisdom, new strength, new clarity, new opportunities, new relationships built upon truth instead of convenience, new connections rooted in mutual growth instead of dependency. The journey may have required you to release people you never wanted to lose, but that does not mean your future is empty. It means your future is still being written. It means there are chapters ahead that you cannot yet imagine. It means God has not forgotten you. The seasons that tested you were also shaping who you were becoming. The heartbreak that nearly broke you revealed a strength you did not know existed. The loneliness that felt unbearable taught you how to hear your own soul again. The disappointments that left you exhausted helped you discover what truly matters. One day you may look back and realize that every departure carried a lesson, every ending carried a purpose, and every difficult season contributed to the person you are today. Not every battle you fought was in vain. Not every tear was wasted. Not every goodbye was meaningless. There is a strength within you that kept moving forward, even on your darkest days. There is a quiet courage inside you that survived moments that should have destroyed your hope. There is a value within your life that cannot be measured by who stayed and who left. You are worth far more than the moments that tried to make you feel small. If this message resonates with the journey you have carried and the losses you have endured, subscribe to the channel and continue walking alongside a community that believes your story still matters. May these messages remind you that your faith, your healing, your growth, and your purpose are still unfolding, even when the path feels lonely. There comes a moment in the life of many chosen people when they stop asking why everyone left and begin asking what those departures were trying to teach them. That shift does not happen quickly. It usually arrives after years of confusion, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion. It arrives after countless attempts to repair relationships that were already falling apart. It arrives after giving second chances, third chances, and sometimes far more chances than wisdom would recommend. It arrives after carrying the emotional weight of people who never seemed willing to carry yours. The chosen often have hearts that remain open long after others would have closed theirs. They forgive when forgiveness is difficult. They remain loyal when loyalty is no longer being returned. They continue hoping when evidence suggests hope should be abandoned. These qualities are beautiful, but they can also create deep wounds when directed toward people who are unable or unwilling to appreciate them. Many chosen people lose so many individuals along their journey because they spend years attracting those who need healing while forgetting their own need for healing. They become the listener. They become the encourager. They become the one who always shows up. They become the safe place for everyone else's struggles. Yet when their own storms arrive, they discover that not everyone who received their kindness was prepared to return it. This realization can feel devastating. It can make a person question the value of being compassionate. It can make a person wonder whether kindness is simply an invitation for disappointment. Yet over time, a deeper understanding begins to emerge. The lesson was never that kindness is wrong. The lesson was that kindness requires wisdom. The lesson was that a generous heart still needs healthy boundaries. The lesson was that being chosen to encourage others does not mean you must abandon yourself. Many of the people who left your life may have revealed something important. They revealed where your identity had become attached to being needed. They revealed where your peace depended too heavily upon approval. They revealed where your fear of loneliness caused you to tolerate situations that diminished your spirit. Those realizations are painful because they force honesty. They require you to see things that you once ignored. They require you to acknowledge that some relationships survived only because you carried them alone. They require you to accept that some people benefited from your presence while contributing very little to your growth. This does not mean you should become bitter. Bitterness is a prison that often hurts the person carrying it more than anyone else. The chosen are not called to become hard-hearted. They are called to become wise-hearted. There is a difference. A hard heart stops loving. A wise heart continues loving while recognizing where love can flourish and where it cannot. As your journey continues, you begin to notice a pattern. Every major season of growth seems to involve some form of separation. Before a new level of understanding arrives, something old often falls away. Before a deeper sense of purpose emerges, familiar comforts sometimes disappear. Before a stronger version of yourself takes shape, relationships built around the old version may begin to fade. This pattern can feel unfair. It can feel lonely. Yet, it is often part of the process of becoming who you were meant to be. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack for years. At first, you become accustomed to the weight. You barely notice it because it has been with you for so long. Then one day, you set it down. Suddenly, you realize how much strength had been consumed simply carrying what no longer belonged on your shoulders. Many relationships are like that. They become so familiar that you stop recognizing how much energy they require. You stop noticing how often you silence your own needs. You stop noticing how often you compromise your peace. You stop noticing how frequently you feel drained after every interaction. Then the relationship ends, and although grief arrives, something else eventually arrives as well. Space, clarity, breathing room, a chance to reconnect with yourself. Many chosen people discover that after the pain settles, they feel lighter. They feel closer to who they truly are. They feel more aligned with the values they almost forgot. This does not erase the sadness. It simply reveals that the ending was not entirely destructive. Some endings create room for restoration. One of the greatest struggles for the chosen is accepting that not everyone is meant to understand them. Deep down, many people carry a desire to be fully seen. They want others to recognize their intentions, their sacrifices, their sincerity, and their heart. When that recognition does not come, disappointment follows. Yet some of the strongest people eventually learn that their purpose cannot depend upon universal understanding. If every person understood you, you would likely never need faith. Faith often requires moving forward without complete validation. Faith often means trusting that your path has value, even when others cannot see it. Many of the people who left your journey were judging a chapter rather than the entire story. They saw a temporary season and assumed it represented your future. They saw a struggle and assumed it represented your identity. They saw a delay and assumed it represented failure. But God often works quietly. Growth often happens beneath the surface. The strongest roots develop underground long before anyone sees the tree. The chosen frequently spend years developing strength, wisdom, patience, and resilience before visible results appear. During those hidden seasons, some people lose interest, some walk away, some stop believing in you. Yet the absence of their belief does not cancel the value of your journey. Some of the most meaningful transformations in your life occurred while nobody was applauding. Some of your greatest breakthroughs happened in private, Some of your most important victories were invisible to everyone except God. He saw the nights when you fought discouragement. He saw the mornings when getting out of bed required courage. He saw the moments when your faith was shaken, but not destroyed. He saw every effort you made to keep moving forward when standing still would have felt easier. Those moments matter. They are not forgotten. They are not insignificant. They are part of the foundation being built beneath your future. The chosen often assume they are losing people because they are somehow lacking. In reality, many departures happen because they are changing. Change is uncomfortable. Growth challenges existing dynamics. Healing alters familiar patterns. As you become healthier emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, some relationships naturally shift. People who connected with your wounds may struggle to connect with your healing. People who benefited from your insecurity may feel uncomfortable with your confidence. People who expected endless access to your energy may resist your boundaries. This does not make you selfish. It makes you responsible for your own well-being. One of the greatest acts of faith is trusting that God can remove people without removing your future. The chosen often fear that every goodbye is evidence of scarcity. They worry that there will be nobody left. They worry that meaningful connections are disappearing forever. Yet life repeatedly shows that endings create openings. Closed doors create new pathways. Empty spaces create opportunities for healthier relationships to enter. The challenge is enduring the waiting period between the loss and the new beginning. That space can feel uncomfortable. It can feel uncertain. It can feel lonely. Yet it is often within that space that healing deepens and identity strengthens. During those seasons, you learn who you are when nobody is affirming you. You learn what you believe when circumstances are difficult. You learn that your value is not determined by popularity, recognition, or constant companionship. You begin to understand that your life possesses meaning independent of external validation. That understanding becomes a source of strength that nobody can take away. The people who left may always remain part of your story, but they do not own the ending of your story. They do not define your future. They do not determine the blessings that still lie ahead. There are chapters you have not yet lived. There are lessons you have not yet learned. There are relationships you have not yet experienced. There are moments of peace, joy, connection, and fulfillment that remain unwritten. Your journey is not over because certain people walked away. In many ways, some of the most meaningful parts may still be ahead. The fact that you endured loss and remained kind is remarkable. The fact that you experienced disappointment and still believe in goodness is remarkable. The fact that you carried pain and continued moving forward reveals a strength that many people underestimate. Your endurance matters. Your faith matters. Your perseverance matters. If these words helped you feel understood and reminded you that your journey still has purpose, subscribe to the channel and continue growing with a community that values faith, healing, encouragement, and resilience. May every message ahead remind you that you are not forgotten, your story is not finished, and your future still holds meaningful possibilities. One day, perhaps sooner than you expect, you will look back across the landscape of your life and notice something that was impossible to see while you were living through the pain. You will notice that every person who left created a crossroads. Every goodbye forced a decision. Every disappointment demanded growth. Every season of loneliness invited you to discover strengths that comfort would never have revealed. Right now, it may still hurt to think about certain names. There may still be memories that bring a heaviness to your heart. There may still be moments when you wonder how people who once seemed so important became strangers. That sadness is human. It reflects the depth of your capacity to love. People who never cared deeply rarely grieve deeply. The fact that certain losses affected you so profoundly says something beautiful about your heart. It says that you invested sincerely. It says that your loyalty was real. It says that your kindness was genuine. Yet there comes a point when healing requires seeing those experiences through a wider lens. The chosen often spend years focused on who left, while overlooking who they became because of those departures. They focus on the pain and miss the transformation. They focus on the absence and miss the strength that emerged in its place. Consider how many things you survived that once seemed impossible. Consider the heartbreaks you thought would destroy you. Consider the disappointments that left you questioning everything. Consider the seasons when you felt forgotten, unseen, and emotionally exhausted. Somehow through all of it you kept moving forward. You may not have moved forward perfectly. You may not have moved forward confidently. There were probably days when you crawled rather than walked. There were probably moments when your faith felt fragile. There were probably nights when you could not see any reason to hope, yet you continued. That matters more than you realize. The world often celebrates dramatic victories, but many of the greatest victories happen quietly. They happen when a person chooses not to give up. They happen when someone continues believing despite disappointment. They happen when a wounded heart decides to remain compassionate. Some of your greatest victories happened in silence when nobody was watching. The chosen frequently underestimate the significance of their endurance because they compare themselves to others. They compare timelines, they compare accomplishments, they compare relationships, they compare visible success. Yet every journey is different. Every path carries unique challenges. Every purpose unfolds in its own season. Some people are building foundations that take years before anything visible appears. Others experience rapid progress but lack depth beneath the surface. God often works differently than human expectations. What appears slow may actually be preparation. What appears empty may actually be development. What appears like loss may actually be protection. Many chosen people eventually realize that some of the individuals they desperately wanted to keep would have prevented them from becoming who they were meant to be. That realization is not rooted in resentment. It is rooted in understanding. You begin to recognize that certain relationships required you to remain small. Certain environments required you to ignore your intuition. Certain connections demanded compromises that slowly eroded your peace. At the time, letting go felt unbearable. Looking back, remaining would have cost far more. One of the most beautiful signs of healing is when gratitude begins to exist alongside grief. You may still miss people. You may still wish certain stories had ended differently, yet you no longer feel trapped by those memories. You begin appreciating what was good without being imprisoned by what was lost. You begin accepting that some people were gifts for a season, some were lessons, some were mirrors, some were warnings, some were blessings. Each contributed something to your journey, even if their role eventually ended. This perspective creates freedom. It allows you to honor the past without living inside it. The chosen are often called to carry hope through circumstances that seem hopeless. That does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means believing that pain can produce wisdom. It means believing that brokenness can become healing. It means believing that difficult chapters are not the end of the story. Your story has value even if it did not unfold the way you expected. Perhaps the life you imagined years ago looks very different from the life you are living now. Perhaps certain dreams changed. Perhaps certain plans disappeared. Perhaps certain people are no longer present. Yet value still exists within your story. Purpose still exists within your journey. Meaning still exists within your experiences. Nothing you endured was wasted. The patience you developed matters. The compassion you cultivated matters. The resilience you built matters. The wisdom you gained matters. Every difficult season contributed something to the person you are becoming. There is a quiet strength within many chosen people that develops only after repeated disappointment. It is not arrogance, it is not emotional distance. It is a deeper trust that they can survive what once terrified them. They learn that loss does not automatically mean destruction. They learn that loneliness does not automatically mean abandonment. They learn that uncertainty does not automatically mean failure. They discover that God can remain present even when circumstances feel confusing. They discover that faith is often strengthened in valleys rather than mountaintops. They discover that some blessings arrive disguised as endings. If you have lost many people along your journey, there is something important you need to remember. The number of people who left does not diminish the value of the person who remained. You remained. You survived. You endured. You carried burdens that few people ever noticed. You fought battles that nobody else understood. You continued showing kindness despite disappointment. You continued seeking growth despite setbacks. You continued believing that your life had meaning, despite seasons that tried to convince you otherwise. That perseverance is extraordinary. There are people who abandon their dreams after far less difficulty. There are people who surrendered their values after far less pressure. There are people who allowed bitterness to consume them after far smaller wounds. Yet you are still here. The fact that you are still standing says more about your strength than you realize. There may still be moments ahead when loneliness visits. There may still be seasons when certain losses resurface in your memory. Healing is rarely a straight line. Growth is rarely perfect. Yet you do not have to fear those moments the way you once did. You now possess evidence of your resilience. You now possess proof that you can survive difficult chapters. You now possess wisdom that only experience could provide. Most importantly, you possess a future that has not yet unfolded. There are people you have not yet met who will appreciate the qualities others overlooked. There are conversations you have not yet had that will bring encouragement. There are opportunities you have not yet seen that will renew your hope. There are blessings you cannot currently imagine. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because life continues moving forward. New chapters continue arriving. New possibilities continue emerging. God is still writing parts of your story that you cannot yet read. The chosen often spend so much time mourning closed doors that they forget to notice the doors quietly opening ahead. Keep your eyes open for those moments. Keep your heart open for healing. Keep your faith open to possibilities greater than your current understanding. The losses you experienced were real, but they are not the final truth about your life. The final truth is that you are still here. You are still growing. You are still becoming. You are still valuable. You are still loved. You are still capable of creating meaning, connection, and purpose in the days ahead. Not every battle you fought was in vain. Not every tear was wasted. Not every ending was punishment. Many of those difficult seasons were preparing you for a future built upon deeper wisdom, stronger faith, and greater emotional freedom. God saw the tears that nobody else noticed. God saw the courage it took to continue. God saw every silent victory. And even now, He has not forgotten you. If this message encouraged your heart and reminded you that your journey still carries meaning, subscribe to the channel and continue receiving messages that strengthen faith, nurture healing, and remind you that you belong. Sometimes encouragement arrives exactly when it is needed most, and perhaps the chapters ahead will bring the reassurance your heart has been searching for.